Every morning at sunrise, Richard Stone visits his son's grave at Arlington Memorial Gardens. Today is different. Through the morning mist, he spots a young, homeless girl placing wildflowers on Michael's grave. She shouldn't be here. This is a private plot in the city's most exclusive cemetery. But as she turns, Richard's heart stops. Those eyes, his son's eyes. In her trembling hands, she holds a worn photograph and a letter that will change everything Richard thought he knew about his perfect son. The truth about Michael's secret life is about to emerge, bringing with it a revelation that will shake the Stone family to its core. Why did Michael keep this earth-shattering secret from his father, and what will Richard do when he discovers just how much his pride has cost him? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Richard's Italian leather shoes crushed the morning frost as he approached. The girl tensed, clutching her backpack closer, like a wounded animal preparing to flee. Her coat was too thin for the February chill, patched in places with mismatched thread. "This is private property," he said, his voice carrying the authority of a man accustomed to being obeyed. But his eyes kept returning to hers, those haunting hazel eyes that mirrored his son's with unsettling precision. "I know, Mr. Stone." Her voice was soft, but steady. She didn't run. The sound of his name stopped him cold. "You know who I am." "Michael told me about you." She pulled something from her worn backpack, a leather-bound journal with dog-eared pages and coffee stains on the cover. "He wrote about you a lot." Richard's hand trembled as he reached for the journal. "That's impossible. My son volunteered at the Hope Street shelter every Wednesday." She finished his sentence with quiet certainty. "He taught art to the kids there. Said it was his way of making a difference that had nothing to do with the Stone family name." Security cameras whirred in the distance. Richard knew Gregory, the head of cemetery security, would be watching, would already be dispatching someone to remove this girl. He raised his hand in a subtle gesture. "Wait, what's your name?" The question came out gentler than he intended. "Sarah." She hesitated, then added, "Sarah Mitchell." But Michael knew. "My mother is Claire." Claire. The name hit him like a physical blow. Memories flooded back. A charity gala 2 years ago, Michael arriving late, distracted, a name mentioned in passing, a young woman who'd caught his eye. Richard had dismissed it as nothing, too focused on the Miller merger to pay attention to. His son's latest infatuation. "Mr. Stone?" Sarah's voice brought him back to the present. "I wouldn't have come, but..." She pulled out a photograph, creased and worn from frequent handling. Michael's smile beamed from the glossy paper. His arm around a beautiful young woman with Sarah's eyes and gentle smile. They stood before a Christmas tree, Michael wearing that ridiculous reindeer sweater his mother had given him. The timestamp in the corner read, December 25th, just 3 weeks before the accident. "He was going to tell you," Sarah's voice cracked. "That night when..." She stopped, swallowing hard. "He had everything planned, the dinner reservation at Montebello's, Mom's ring." Richard's knees weakened. He found himself gripping Michael's headstone for support. "Ring? They were engaged, Mr. Stone. Secretly. Mom was pregnant with me." Sarah's words came faster now, as if afraid she'd lose her courage. Michael wanted to do things right, but he was scared. "Scared you wouldn't understand, that I'd disapprove," Richard finished, his voice hollow. The weight of unspoken words, of chances lost forever, pressed down on him like lead. In the distance, boots crunched on gravel. Gregory appeared at the cemetery gate, questioning look on his face. Richard waved him back again, more firmly this time. "Where is Claire now?" he asked, though something in Sarah's eyes, in the threadbare coat and worn shoes, told him he already knew the answer. "Cancer, 2 years ago." Sarah's fingers traced the letters of Michael's name on the granite. "Right after Mom. The foster system wasn't great. I aged out last month, but I had to come here. Had to let you know that Michael..." Her voice broke. "He loved you so much. Even when he was afraid to tell you the truth, every entry in his journal talks about making you..." "I'm proud." Richard stared at the photograph, at his son's face frozen in a moment of pure joy. The same joy he'd dismissed, too busy with spreadsheets and acquisitions to notice the changes in his own child. Now, looking at Sarah, this girl with his son's eyes and Claire's smile, he saw 15 years of moments lost. 15 years he could never get back. The morning mist was burning away, sunrise painting the cemetery in shades of gold. Sarah turned to go, shoulders squared against the cold. "Wait." Richard's voice surprised him with its urgency. "That journal. May I?" Sarah hesitated, then held out the worn leather book. "He'd want you to have it. Just promise you'll read it. Really read it." As Richard took the journal, their hands briefly touched. In that moment, he felt the weight of all his son had tried to tell him, all the words that had gone unspoken. Between them, "I promise," he said, and for the first time in 2 years, he felt something shift inside him, like a door long rusted shut, beginning finally to open. Richard's corner office on the 48th floor of Stone Tower had always been his sanctuary. Now, with Michael's journal open on his desk, it felt more like a confessional. The morning sun cast long shadows across the leather and mahogany, highlighting a concert ticket stub he'd found pressed between the pages, the symphony orchestra's Christmas performance. "Cancel my meetings for the day, Martha." His intercom crackled with his executive assistant's startled pause. In 30 years, he'd never cleared his schedule without warning. "Sir, the board meeting, all of them." He returned to the journals. First entry, dated 3 years ago. Dad's victory speech at the shareholders' meeting today. Fourth quarter profits up 23%. He looked so proud, telling everyone how the Stone legacy would continue through me. If he only knew I spent this morning teaching homeless kids how to draw. Their smiles were worth more than any stock portfolio. Met a volunteer coordinator named Claire. She sees them too, the invisible people Dad's high-rise casts shadows over. Every day. Richard's hands shook as he turned the page. More memories spilled out. Claire's laugh during their first coffee date, her passion for teaching art to underprivileged children, the way she challenged Michael's assumptions about success and worth. The intercom buzzed again. "Mr. Stone, your wife is here." Victoria Stone entered before he could respond, her Hermes scarf trailing concerned elegance. She stopped short at the sight of him, her always composed husband, surrounded by scattered journal pages. "The board meeting called," her voice held a question. "They said you cancelled everything. Richard, what's—" She noticed the photograph on his desk. "Who is she?" "Claire Mitchell." The name felt strange on his tongue. She worked at Hope Street Shelter. She and Michael were— He couldn't finish. Victoria sank into the chair across from him, her perfectly manicured hands gripping her purse. "Were what, Richard?" "Engaged." He pushed the photograph across the desk. "She was pregnant when he died. We have a granddaughter, Victoria, a 15-year-old granddaughter named Sarah, who's been living in foster homes because I was too blind to see what was right in front of me." Victoria's sharp intake of breath cut through the office silence. She lifted the photograph with trembling fingers, studying the woman who would have been her daughter-in-law. "The charity gala," she whispered. "Christmas before last. Michael introduced us, but I was so busy with the silent auction." Her voice trailed off as tears filled her eyes. "He tried to tell us, didn't he?" Richard nodded, memories of that night flooding back. Michael pulling him aside, uncharacteristically serious. "Dad, there's something important we need to discuss." But the Miller merger was falling apart, and Richard had brushed him off. "Later, son, whatever it is can wait." But it couldn't wait. 2 weeks later, Michael's car hit a patch of black ice. The last words Richard spoke to his son were about quarterly projections. A sticky note fluttered from between the journal's pages, an old receipt from Winston & Sons jewelers. The diamond ring had cost 2 months of Michael's salary. He'd refused to use the family money, wanting to prove something to himself. To Claire, to the father who measured everything in profit margins. "There's more?" Richard's voice was hoarse. "Sarah was at his grave this morning. She has his eyes, Victoria. His exact eyes. She's been homeless since aging out of the foster system, while we've been living here in our glass tower, surrounded by all this. He gestured at the trappings of wealth that suddenly seemed meaningless. Victoria stood abruptly, her composure cracking. Where is she now? I don't know. The admission felt like another failure. She gave me the journal and left before I could find her. Victoria's voice held steel beneath the tears. Whatever it takes. Find our granddaughter, Richard, before we lose the last piece of our son all over again. I need everything you can find on Claire Mitchell and her daughter, Sarah. Richard paced his home office, while Marcus Webb, his most trusted private investigator, took notes. Birth records, medical history, foster care documentation, everything. The mother's deceased, Marcus asked, his weathered face revealing nothing. Cancer, 2 years ago. Richard paused at the window, staring out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, his granddaughter was sleeping rough, while he stood in a room worth more than most people made in a year. Sarah mentioned Hope Street. Shelter. Start there. Marcus nodded, already typing on his tablet. Any other leads? Richard handed him the photograph. This was taken at their Christmas party. Someone there must remember them. After Marcus left, Richard returned to Michael's journal. The entries around Christmas painted a vivid picture. Claire organizing the shelter's art program, Michael falling deeper in love, both of them dreaming of a future that would never come. His phone buzzed. A text from Victoria. Found something. In Michael's old room. Come up. He found his wife sitting on Michael's bed, surrounded by boxes she'd pulled from the closet. The room remained exactly as their son had left it, preserved like a museum to their grief. Victoria held up a manila envelope. Hospital records, she said quietly, from St. Mary's General. She pulled out a birth certificate, the paper slightly. Yellowed, Sarah Mitchell, born September 15th, mother Claire Mitchell, father. Her voice caught, father Michael Stone. Richard took the document with trembling hands. There it was in black and white, irrefutable proof. His son's signature, dated just 3 weeks after the funeral. He knew, Richard whispered, before the accident. He knew about the baby. There's more. Victoria handed him a stack of papers. Prenatal care records, ultrasound images, a half-completed insurance form in Michael's handwriting. He was trying to add them to his policy. The paperwork wasn't finished when a sharp knock interrupted her. Martha stood in the doorway, looking uncertain. Mr. Stone, there's a call from Hope Street Shelter. They say it's urgent. Richard grabbed the extension in Michael's room, putting it on speaker. This is Richard Stone. Mr. Stone. This is Anna Delgado, volunteer coordinator at Hope Street. The woman's voice was kind, but concerned. One of our regulars mentioned you were asking about Claire Mitchell and her daughter. Sarah was here last night. Victoria gripped Richard's hand. Is she still there? Richard asked. No, she left this morning, but Anna hesitated. She's not well, Mr. Stone. She was running a fever, coughing badly. We tried to convince her to let us take her to the clinic, but she refused. Said she couldn't afford it. Richard closed his eyes, his free hand clenching into a fist. Do you know where she might have gone? She mentioned the library on 5th Street. It's warm there, and the security guards usually let the regulars stay all day if they're quiet. Anna's voice softened. Mr. Stone, if you're really her grandfather, like she said, she needs help. Soon. Thank you, Anna. I'll take care of it. Richard ended the call, already reaching for his coat. Richard, Victoria's voice stopped him. We need to do this right. She's scared, sick, and she has every reason not to trust us. Let me come with you. He looked at his wife, really looked at her. In 30 years of marriage, he'd never seen such determination in her eyes. She'd already grabbed her purse and was pulling out her phone. I'm calling Dr. Reynolds. He'll meet us at the house. She touched Michael's birth certificate, still framed on the wall. We're not losing her, Richard. Not again. As they rode the elevator down to the garage, Richard studied the birth certificate in his hand, the one proving Sarah was his flesh and blood, the one Michael had signed, full of hope for a future he'd never see. a future his daughter had been living without, while Richard had been clinging to an empty room and memories of who he thought his son was. Fifth Street Library, he told his driver. And hurry. The Fifth Street Library was a Victorian-era building that had seen better days. Inside, warmth and the musty scent of old books wrapped around them like a familiar blanket. Victoria immediately headed for the reference section, where the homeless often gathered on cold days. Richard lingered at the front desk, showing Sarah's photo to a librarian with greying hair and kind eyes. "She comes here often. Have you seen her today?" Sarah, the librarian, her nameplate read Ms. Peterson, nodded in recognition. "Sweet girl, always reading art books." She glanced at the clock. She was here earlier, in her usual spot by the Renaissance collection. Left about an hour ago, coughing something awful. Richard's heart sank. Did she say where she was going? No, but Ms. Peterson hesitated, then reached under her desk. "She left this behind. I was going to keep it safe until she came back." She handed Richard a small velvet box, worn at the edges. Inside was an engagement ring, modest by stone standards, but beautiful in its simplicity. Tucked beneath it was a receipt from Winston and Sons Jewelers, marked "Paid in Full" in Michael's handwriting. "Claire used to wear that," Miss Peterson said softly, "before she got sick. Said it was from Sarah's father." She studied Richard's face more carefully. "You're him, aren't you? Michael Stone's father?" Before Richard could respond, Victoria's voice echoed across the library. "Richard! Over here!" He found her in the art section, holding a large book on Renaissance paintings. Several pages were dog-eared, and in the margins were small sketches, precise, talented drawings that could have been done by Michael or Sarah. "Look at the dates," Victoria whispered, pointing to tiny numbers beside each sketch. They spanned the last 2 years, right up to last week. "She's been coming here, teaching herself to draw, just like Michael." Richard touched one of the sketches, a perfect rendering of Michael's headstone. "She's not just surviving," he realized. "She's trying to keep him alive through art." Victoria's phone buzzed. "Marcus, he found something." She put the call on speaker. "Mr. and Mrs. Stone, I've got records from Sarah's last foster home. She aged out 3 weeks ago, but before that," Marcus paused, "there were issues. The family was collecting checks, but not providing proper care. Sarah reported them twice, but nothing came of it. Systems overwhelmed." "Where was this home?" Richard's voice was deadly quiet. "East Side, Maple Street, but there's more. I found Claire's old apartment. Landlord kept their things in storage. Said Claire paid a year in advance before she died. He's willing to let you see it." Victoria was already moving toward the exit. "Text us the address." The storage unit was in a basement facility that smelled of damp concrete. Unit 23B contained several boxes and a small lamp, the remnants of a life cut short. Richard opened the first box with trembling hands. Art supplies, brushes, paints, half-used sketchbooks, filled with Claire's lessons, plans for the shelters, art program. Beneath them, a photo album. The first page showed Claire and Michael at a carnival, their faces painted like tigers, Sarah barely visible as a bump beneath Claire's flowing dress. "Richard." Victoria's voice cracked as she lifted something from another box, a small blue sweater with a note pinned to it. "For the baby. Love, Dad." Michael had known, had been preparing, had wanted this child, this family, with a depth of love that Richard was only now beginning to understand. A violent coughing echo from somewhere above made them both freeze. Footsteps shuffled across the concrete floor, followed by the sound of someone catching their breath. "She's here," Victoria whispered. Already heading for the stairs, Richard gathered the sweater and photo album, his heart pounding. After 2 years of grief, after 15 years of not knowing his granddaughter existed, he was finally beginning to see the full picture of who his son had been and who Sarah was fighting to become. But would they find her in time? And more importantly, would she let them help before it was too late? They found Sarah huddled in the stairwell, her thin jacket pulled tight around her shoulders. The cough that racked her body seemed to come from deep in her chest. Victoria immediately shrugged off her cashmere coat, but Sarah shrank away from the offered warmth. "I don't need charity," she whispered, though her shivering betrayed her. Richard knelt beside her, holding out the blue baby sweater. "This isn't charity, Sarah. This is family." Her eyes fixed on the tiny garment. Recognition flickering across her fever-flushed face. "Where did you—" "Your mother kept everything," Victoria said gently, settling beside them. "Michael's gifts, the photos, your art supplies." Another cough seized Sarah, and this time she didn't resist when Victoria wrapped the coat around her shoulders. Richard pulled out his phone. "Dr. Reynolds is waiting at our house. Please, let us help you." Sarah's fingers traced the note pinned to the sweater, her father's handwriting. "He really wanted me. More than anything." Richard opened the photo album, showing her the carnival picture. "Michael spent every Wednesday at Hope Street Shelter. We found his volunteer badge." He pulled out the worn plastic ID card that had been tucked inside Michael's journal. The photo showed his son grinning, paint smudged on his cheek, surrounded by children's artwork. "That was his favorite day," Sarah said softly. "Mom said he'd come straight from the office, still in his suit, and roll up his sleeves to help. With art class." A ghost of a smile touched her lips. "The kids called him Mr. Mike." Victoria dabbed at her eyes. "Tell us more, please." He started a program there, art therapy for kids who'd experienced trauma. Sarah's voice strengthened with pride. Mom was running it, but she needed supplies. He donated everything anonymously, said it wasn't about the stone name or tax write-offs. It was about giving kids a voice. Richard remembered board meetings where Michael had argued passionately for increasing their charitable giving. How many other secret programs had his son supported? How many lives had he touched while Richard was focused solely on profit margins? "The program's gone now," Sarah continued, pain creeping into her voice. "After Mom got sick, there was no one to run it. The supplies ran out. The kids—" She broke off, coughing violently. Victoria steadied her, feeling the heat radiating from her granddaughter's skin. "That's enough talking. You need a doctor." But Sarah wasn't finished. She reached into her backpack with trembling hands and pulled out a sketchbook. "I've been practicing, trying to be good enough to restart the program someday. Mom always said art could heal broken things." The sketchbook was filled with portraits, homeless children, shelter volunteers, scenes of life on the streets, captured with stunning empathy and skill. On the final page was a drawing of Michael and Claire, based on the carnival photo, but transformed into something more. In Sarah's art, they were dancing among stars, their love radiating from every pencil stroke. "You are your father's daughter," Richard whispered, his vision blurring. "And it's time to come home." This time, when he helped her to her feet, Sarah didn't pull away. Victoria supported her other side as they made their way to the waiting car, leaving behind the damp concrete walls that had been her refuge. As they drove through the city streets, Sarah's head rested against Victoria's shoulder, her breathing labored but steady. Richard watched them in the rearview mirror, seeing shadows of Michael in every line of his granddaughter's face. The hope. Street Shelter's sign flickered as they passed it, letters burned out but still recognizable. Richard made a mental note to have Marcus start paperwork in the morning. The art therapy program wouldn't stay gone for long. Not if Sarah was willing to help rebuild it. Some broken things, he was beginning to understand, could be healed through more than just art. Sometimes it took losing everything to see what really mattered and who you were meant to become. "Pneumonia," Dr. Reynolds confirmed, packing away his stethoscope. "She'll need complete bed rest and a course of antibiotics. I'm also concerned about her overall state of malnutrition." Richard stood in the doorway of Michael's old room, where Sarah lay sleeping. They'd kept it unchanged for 2 years, a shrine to their grief. Now, with Sarah's worn backpack beside the desk and her sketchbook on the nightstand, it felt alive again. "She'll receive the best care," Victoria assured the doctor, but her voice carried an edge of worry. The unsent letter they'd found in Michael's journal lay heavy in her pocket, his final attempt to tell them about Claire and the baby. After the doctor left, Richard's phone buzzed. Margaret Chen, head of PR for Stone Enterprises. "Richard, we have a situation. Someone at the cemetery posted about the girl. Social media is buzzing with speculation about a secret Stone heir." He ended the call without responding. Let them speculate. Sarah's health mattered more than stock prices. "Richard," Victoria's voice was tight, "the board is calling. Again. Let them. You can't ignore this. If word gets out about Sarah, then what?" His voice rose sharply. "We failed her once. I won't do it again because the board is worried about optics." A small sound from the bed made them both turn. Sarah was awake, fever-bright eyes taking in their argument. "I should go," she whispered, trying to sit up. "I'm causing problems." "No." Victoria moved swiftly to her side, easing her back against the pillows. "Your family. You're staying." But Sarah's eyes had found the letter on the bedside table, Michael's handwriting visible through the worn envelope. Her hands trembled as she reached for it. "I've never seen this one," she said, softly. Richard watched as she unfolded the paper, seeing his son's last words through her eyes. "Dad, by the time you read this, you'll probably be furious. The press will call it a scandal, the Stone heir's secret affair with a shelter volunteer. But Claire is more than that. She's the love of my life, and she's carrying our child, your grandchild. I know you had different plans for me, the merger, the expansion, the legacy you built, but I've found my own legacy in the shelter's art room, in Claire's smile, in the future we're creating together. The ring isn't from Tiffany's. I bought it with my own savings because Claire taught me that real value isn't about price tags. She grew up with nothing, but she gives everything to those kids at Hope Street. She's made me see the world differently. You always taught me that. A stone never backs down from a challenge. Well, this is mine. I'm going to be a father, and I'm going to do it right, even if that means disappointing you. I love you, Dad. I hope someday you'll understand. Michael." Sarah's tears fell on the letter, smudging the ink. "He never got to send it." Victoria sat on the bed's edge, gathering her granddaughter close. "He wanted to tell us that night at the gala, the night of the accident," Sarah finished. "Mum said he was coming from buying the ring. He was finally ready to stand up to—" She stopped, glancing uncertainly at Richard. "To me," Richard completed, his voice raw. "He was afraid of me, my own son." The silence that followed was broken by another round of coughing. Victoria reached for the antibiotics, but Sarah curled away. "Maybe this was a mistake," she whispered. "I don't belong in your world. The press, the board meetings, I'll just hurt your reputation." Richard moved to the window, staring out at the city lights. In the glass reflection, he could see Sarah, so like Michael in her stubbornness, her pride, her desire to protect others at her own expense. "No more running," he said firmly. "No more hiding. Michael wanted to stand up to me. Well, now I'm standing up for what he believed in, for who he loved." He turned back to them. "The board can either accept that the Stone family is changing, or they can find themselves a new CEO." Victoria waited until Sarah's breathing deepened into sleep before slipping away to her private study. Claire's diary, found among the storage unit's treasures, lay unopened on her desk. She'd been waiting for the right moment, gathering courage, to read the words of the woman who should have been her daughter-in-law. The first entry was dated 3 years ago. Today, a man in an expensive suit rolled up his sleeves and taught homeless kids how to draw sunflowers. He didn't care about getting paint on his Armani. He just wanted to make them smile. "I think I'm in trouble." Victoria smiled through her tears, remembering how Michael would come home with paint stains, always with some excuse about a clumsy intern. The diary continued. "Michael Stone, son of Richard Stone, the billionaire. He should be completely wrong for me, but he sees the world the way I do, not in dollars, but in moments of joy, in chances to make a difference. Today, he helped Tommy, one of our shelter regulars, learn to mix colors. Art is a voice for those who've been silenced, he said. I think I'm falling in love. A soft knock interrupted her reading. James Chen, Richard's oldest friend and financial advisor, stood in the doorway. The board's calling for an emergency meeting, he said quietly, but I think I have a solution. Victoria tensed. We're not hiding, Sarah. No, James smiled, pulling out a folder. We're going to do what Michael would have wanted. He spread out documents showing the Hope Street shelter's financial struggles. The place is about to close. But if the Stone Foundation were to step in, create a proper art therapy program. A legacy, Victoria whispered, understanding dawning. Not just for Michael, but for Claire too. The board can't argue with positive PR. And Sarah, she could run it when she's ready, continue what her parents started. Victoria turned back to the diary, finding an entry from just before the accident. Michael bought a ring today, not from some fancy jeweler, but from a small shop where the owner knows each piece's story. My father measures everything in zeros, he told me, but you taught me that true worth isn't about the price tag. We're having dinner with his parents next week. He's nervous but ready to stand up for us, for our baby, for the life we want to build, a life that bridges two worlds. Oh, Michael, Victoria breathed, touching the page gently. You were braver than we ever knew. James watched her with understanding. In 30 years of friendship, he'd seen the Stones weather countless storms. But this was different. This was about redemption. The press will be at the board meeting, he warned. They're already asking questions about the girl at the cemetery. Victoria squared her shoulders, a plan forming. Then let's give them something to write about. Call Anna at Hope Street. Tell her we need every success story from Michael's art program, every life he touched, every child who found their voice through his kindness. She glanced toward Sarah's room, where her granddaughter slept surrounded by the ghosts of her parents' dreams. It's time the world knew who Michael really was. Not the heir to Stone Enterprises, but the man who taught homeless children to paint sunflowers. The diary's final entry caught her eye. Dated the day before the accident. The baby kicked today, while Michael was reading Goodnight Moon to the shelter kids. His whole face lit up. This is what matters, he whispered. This is the legacy I want to leave. Tomorrow, he faces his father. Tomorrow, our two worlds finally merge. I'm not worried. Love like this can bridge any divide. Victoria closed the diary gently, holding it close to her heart. James, start the paperwork for the foundation and call my lawyer. It's time to make Sarah officially part of this family, if she'll have us. Marcus's manila envelope landed on Richard's desk with a weight that seemed too heavy for paper. Medical bills, dozens of them, each stamped with increasingly urgent payment notices. St. Mary's General Hospital had tried to work with Claire, arranging payment plans she could never hope to meet on a shelter worker's salary. She sold everything, Marcus said quietly. The ring, her art supplies, even her mother's antique locket. Still wasn't enough for the treatments. Richard's hand shook as he read the oncologist's notes. Stage 4, pancreatic cancer. Diagnosed 6 months after Michael's death. Claire had fought hard, working double shifts at the shelter until she physically couldn't stand, all while raising Sarah alone. The social worker's reports are worse, Marcus continued, pulling out more documents. Claire tried to arrange private adoption with her best friend, Anna, from Hope Street, but without financial resources. The system took Sarah. Richard's voice was hollow. The foster care records told a story of systematic neglect. The Hendersons. Sarah's first placement looked good on paper. Reality proved different. Missed school days, unexplained bruises, lost paperwork when investigations were launched. She ran away 3 times, Marcus said. Always back to Hope Street, always to her mother's art classroom. They'd find her there, sleeping under the supply table, clutching Michael's old volunteer badge. Victoria entered silently, having heard enough. Show me the Hendersons' current foster placements. Already on it, Marcus nodded. 3 kids under their care right now. I've flagged it with the authorities. Richard stared at a photo of the Hendersons' house, a tidy suburban facade hiding God knew what horrors. Make sure those children have somewhere safe to go. Use whatever resources needed. A small sound made them turn. Sarah stood in the doorway, pale but steady, wearing one of Michael's old Harvard sweatshirts Victoria had found for her. You don't have to fix everything, she said softly. What happened? It's just how things are in the system. No, Victoria's voice was steel. It's what happens when people look the other way, when they decide some children matter less than others. Sarah moved to the desk, touching one of her mother's medical bills. She never told me how bad it was. Kept saying everything would work out, that angels were watching over us. A bitter smile touched her lips. I guess they were too busy protecting people who could afford them. Richard pulled out his checkbook, but Sarah stopped him. Money can't change the past, Mr. Stone. Richard, he corrected gently. Or, if you're willing, Grandpa. He met her eyes, Michael's eyes, steadily. You're right. Money can't change what happened, but it can help make sure it doesn't happen to others. Victoria placed Claire's diary beside the medical bills. Your mother wrote something here near the end, about legacy, about how Michael taught her that true wealth isn't what you have, but what you give. She took Sarah's hand. Help us give something back, in their names. Sarah's fingers trembled as she opened the diary to its last pages. Claire's handwriting was shaky, the words written from her hospital bed. My dearest Sarah, the doctors say I don't have much time. There's so much I need to tell you, so much I hope you'll understand someday. Your father was the most beautiful soul I've ever known. He saw worth in everyone, especially those the world had forgotten. That's what I want you to remember about him. Not the name or the money, but the way he'd spend hours teaching a homeless child to draw, just to see them smile. I'm so sorry I have to leave you. Sorry I couldn't provide the life you deserve. But you have his heart, his talent, his way of seeing beauty in broken things. Somewhere out there, your father's family exists in a world we never quite reached. Maybe someday, when you're ready, you'll bridge that gap. Just remember, true legacy isn't in bank accounts or business empires. It's in the lives we touch, the hope we create, the love we leave behind. All my love, Mom. The family photo album lay open on the library table, its empty spaces like missing teeth in an otherwise perfect smile. Victoria carefully removed the gilt-edged page that had once showcased Michael's business achievements. Are you sure about this? Sarah asked, still wearing Michael's Harvard sweatshirt, her fever finally broken after 3 days of rest. These spaces, Victoria said, sliding a new photo into place. Michael at Hope Street, surrounded by children's artwork, were waiting for the real story. Richard entered with the morning papers. The headline made Sarah flinch. Stone heirs. Secret child. Scandal or salvation? They're camped outside the gates, he said, his voice tight. Every news outlet in the city. Sarah moved to the window, peeking through heavy curtains at the media circus below. I never meant to cause all this. You didn't, Victoria said firmly, continuing to rearrange the album. Decades of putting image above humanity did this, of caring more about stock prices than people. Richard picked up a photo that had fallen from the album, Michael's Harvard graduation. How proud he'd been that day, watching his son follow in his footsteps. Now he saw what he'd missed. Michael's smile had been polite, rehearsed. Nothing like the genuine joy captured in the shelter photos. The board's demanding a statement, he said quietly. Then let's give them one. Victoria's voice held steel beneath its elegance. She pulled out Michael's old volunteer badge, placing it beside his Yale MBA in the album. The whole story. Every photo, every sketch, every life he touched at Hope Street. Sarah's fingers traced a news clipping about the shelter's art program. Mom kept everything. Said someday people would understand what Dad was trying to build. The intercom buzzed. Martha's voice was apologetic. "Mr. Stone, the chairman of the board is here, with the PR team." Richard looked at his granddaughter, seeing uncertainty war with determination in her face. "Your choice, Sarah. We can wait." But Sarah was already pulling out her sketchbook, opening to the portraits she'd drawn of shelter children. "Dad never got to tell his story. Maybe that's what I'm supposed to do." The library door opened. Charles Whitman, board chairman for 20 years, entered with Margaret Chen from PR close behind. Their practiced smiles faltered at the sight of the photo album, the scattered evidence of Michael's secret life. "Richard," Whitman began, "the shareholders are about to learn what real value looks like." Richard's voice was quiet but firm. He gestured to the album. "My son spent every Wednesday teaching art to homeless children. While we were counting profits, he was changing lives." "It's a beautiful story," Margaret interjected smoothly. "But the timing is perfect." Victoria placed Claire's diary on the table. "Hope Street Shelter is about to close, unless—" Understanding dawned in Margaret's eyes. "A foundation in Michael's name." "And Claire's," Sarah added softly. All eyes turned to her. She stood straighter, Michael's quiet strength evident in her bearing. "The Claire Mitchell Stone Foundation for Arts Education, providing art therapy and education for underprivileged youth." Charles Whitman's business instincts warred visibly with his concerns. The publicity could be exactly what this family needs. Margaret was already typing on her tablet. Not a scandal, but a redemption story. The prodigal grandson who saw beyond wealth to true value. His secret love for a shelter worker. Their daughter bridging two worlds through art. "Their daughter," Richard emphasized, "who is now my heir, and will help run the foundation once she's finished her education." Sarah's head snapped up. "What? If you want to," Victoria added gently. "Your father believed art could heal broken things. Help us." "Prove him right." Tears spilled down Sarah's cheeks as she opened her sketchbook to a new portrait. Michael and Claire dancing among stars, but now with a third figure. A young girl reaching for both their hands, creating constellations with every step. "When can we announce?" Margaret asked softly. Richard looked at his granddaughter. "Sarah," she wiped her eyes, squaring her shoulders. "First, we save Hope Street. The press can wait until we've guaranteed the art program continues." A small, fierce smile, so like Michael's, touched her lips. "Dad would want us to put the kids first." Marcus arrived late that evening with a stack of legal documents, his face grave but hopeful. Found these in Michael's personal safe deposit box. He'd started the paperwork for a trust fund. Richard spread the documents across his study desk. The trust documentation was meticulous, written in Michael's careful hand. He'd planned to seed it with his personal savings, not the family money, building something that was purely his gift to his child. "There's more," Marcus said, pulling out another folder. He'd been researching schools with strong art therapy. Programs had applications filled out in Sarah's name, projected 18 years into the future. Victoria touched the college brochures with trembling fingers. He planned everything, almost everything. Marcus's voice softened. The trust was never finalized. He died before he could sign the papers. Sarah, who'd been quietly sketching in the corner, looked up. "He really thought that far ahead. See for yourself." Richard handed her a handwritten note attached to the trust paperwork. "For my child, I'm writing this before you're born, before I even know if you're a boy or girl. Your mother thinks I'm crazy, planning so far ahead, but I want to get this right. Money isn't everything. That's the most important lesson I can teach you. But used wisely, it can open doors, create opportunities, help others. This trust isn't about making you rich. It's about giving you choices, the freedom to follow your heart, like your mother taught me to do. Whether that means art school or medical school or opening a shelter of your own, the choice will be yours. All I ask is that you remember where this came from. Not from the stone fortune, but from Wednesday afternoons teaching kids to paint." From your mother's smile when she helps someone find their voice through art. From love, not duty. Love. Dad, Sarah's hands shook as she read. He had so many dreams for me. Dreams we can still fulfill, Victoria said firmly. She pulled out the trust paperwork. Richard? He was already reaching for his pen. We'll honor his wishes. Set up the trust exactly as he planned, with the original amount he intended. He looked at Sarah. Anything beyond that, and there will be more, will be because we choose to give it as your grandparents. The press will want to know about inheritance, Marcus warned. The board, too. Then let me tell them. Sarah's voice was quiet but determined. She held up her sketchbook showing a new drawing. The Hope Street shelter transformed, its walls alive with murals, children painting at new easels. About the foundation. About Dad's real legacy. Richard studied the drawing. You've given this thought. Every night at the shelter, I dreamed of having the power to make things better, not just for me, but for everyone there. She turned the page, revealing more sketches, classroom layouts, therapy spaces, a garden where children could draw in natural light. I never had the resources, but Dad, he believed in this enough to plan it before I was even born. Victoria sat beside her granddaughter. Tell us more. As Sarah explained her vision for the foundation, Richard noticed something else in Marcus's stack of papers, a small notebook, its cover worn. Opening it, he found lists of children's names, each with detailed notes in Michael's handwriting. Tommy loves dinosaurs, struggles with anger. Art helps him focus. Maria doesn't speak since losing her mom, but her paintings say everything. Dev, amazing talent, needs supplies and encouragement. He kept track of all of them. Richard whispered. Sarah looked up. He remembered every birthday, every favorite color. There was this one girl, Jenny. She was so scared of making mistakes that she wouldn't pick up a brush. Dad spent 3 weeks just letting her mix colors, teaching her there are no wrong choices in art. Her eyes filled with tears. She's in art school now, on scholarship. Victoria squeezed her hand. Then that's where we start. Finding all of them. Showing the world who Michael really was through the lives he touched. Richard looked at his granddaughter, this miracle who carried Michael's compassion and Claire's strength, and saw the future taking shape, not in stock portfolios or corporate mergers, but in children's drawings and second chances. The headlines screamed across every major newspaper. Stone, heir's secret daughter, found homeless. Billionaire's granddaughter lived on streets. Stone family scandal rocks business world. Each story more sensational than the last, each missing the real heart of Michael's legacy. Sarah stood before the mirror in what had been her father's room, now slowly becoming hers. Victoria helped her adjust the simple black dress they'd chosen for the press conference. Remember, Victoria said softly, you don't have to share anything. You're not ready to. Sarah touched the small art supplies pin on her lapel, her mother's, worn every day while teaching at Hope Street. I want to tell their story, not the one the papers are writing. Downstairs, Richard faced the board members who demanded this public statement. Sarah speaks first, he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. Before the lawyers, before the PR team. She tells her father's story her way. Charles Whitman shifted uncomfortably. The shareholders will learn what real value looks like, Richard finished. He held up the morning's financial papers. The Stone Enterprises stock had dropped 15 points since the story broke. Some things matter more than market fluctuations. The press conference room was packed. Cameras flashed as Sarah walked to the podium, her grandparents flanking her protectively. She placed her father's volunteer badge on the podium beside her notes. You all want to know about scandal, she began, her voice quiet but clear. About secret affairs and hidden fortunes. But this is a story about love, about a man who taught homeless children to paint because he believed everyone deserves a voice. She opened her sketchbook, holding up the portrait she'd drawn of Michael teaching at Hope Street. The cameras clicked frantically. My father didn't just volunteer at a shelter. He created a sanctuary where kids could forget they were homeless, where they could just be artists. She turned the page, showing more sketches. This is Tommy, now studying art education in college. This is Maria, who runs youth programs at her local community center. This is Jenny, whose paintings were featured in a gallery last month. Sarah's voice strengthened. You want to know about the Stone legacy? This is it. Not in bank accounts or stock prices, but in lives transformed. My mother understood that. She taught art alongside my father, believing that creativity could heal broken spirits. She pulled out Claire's diary, reading, "Today, Michael spent 3 hours teaching a little boy to draw his nightmares, turning monsters into something less frightening. He didn't care about getting paint on his $1,000 suit. He just wanted that child to feel safe." The room had grown quiet, the rapid-fire clicking of cameras slowing. "Yes, I was homeless," Sarah continued. "Yes, I aged out of foster care. But I'm not here to talk about that. I'm here to announce the Claire Mitchell Stone Foundation for Arts Education." She revealed her sketches for the transformed Hope Street shelter. "Every child deserves what my father gave those kids, a chance to be heard, a chance to create, a chance to heal." A reporter called out, "What about your inheritance? Your claim to the stone fortune?" Sarah met his eyes steadily. "My father's real fortune wasn't in his bank account. It was in the lives he touched. That's the inheritance I claim. That's the legacy I choose to continue." Later, watching the coverage at home, Richard saw how the story had shifted. The headlines now read, "Stone Heir's Secret Mission of Mercy. Hope Street Angel, the real Michael Stone story. Art as salvation, a father's hidden legacy." Sarah sat between him and Victoria on the sofa, exhausted but proud. On the coffee table lay a stack of emails, former Hope Street kids sharing their stories, offering to help with the foundation. Michael's quiet revolution finally coming to light. "You did good, kiddo," Richard said softly, using the nickname he'd heard Michael use in one of the shelter videos. "Your parents would be proud." Sarah leaned against his shoulder, her eyes on the TV, where her father's shelter photos played in a loop. "Think we changed any minds today?" Victoria squeezed her hand. "We changed the conversation. Sometimes that's where healing begins." The foundation paperwork covered every surface of Richard's home office. Sarah sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by floor plans and program proposals. Michael's old Harvard sweatshirt now a comfort rather than a shield. "The East Wing could be individual therapy spaces," she explained, pointing to her sketches. "Mom always said some kids need quiet corners to create." Richard studied the budget proposals. The initial funding would be significant, enough to buy the building outright and support operations for 5 years. But Sarah had insisted on something else, a matching program for outside donors. "People need to invest in these kids," she'd explained, "not just with money but with belief." Victoria entered with Anna from Hope Street, both carrying stacks of files. "We found them," Anna announced, her eyes bright. "Every child Michael and Claire worked with. 5 years of art program participants." Sarah reached for the files with trembling hands. So many names, so many stories. Her father and mother had touched hundreds of lives, one paintbrush at a time. "There's more," Anna continued. "Remember Jenny? The girl afraid to paint? She's offered to teach, says it's time to pass on what Michael gave her." The door opened again. James Chen entered with Marcus, both looking pleased. The board unanimously approved the foundation's establishment, James announced. Even Charles Whitman was convinced after seeing the community response. Marcus handed Sarah a thick envelope. "These came for you, letters from former Hope Street kids, their families. They all want to help." Sarah opened the first letter, reading aloud, "Dear Miss Stone, you might not remember me, but your father taught me to draw when I was 8. My family had just lost everything in a fire. I wouldn't speak to anyone. But Mr. Mike, as we called, him sat with me every Wednesday, helping me draw what I couldn't say. Today, I'm an art therapist because of him, because he showed me that art isn't just about making pretty pictures. It's about healing hearts." I've enclosed something I think you should have. Mr. Mike drew it the last day I saw him. He was talking about his own baby on the way, how he hoped they'd love art as much as he did. I kept it all these years, but it belongs with you now. Sarah pulled out a sketch from the envelope, a simple drawing of a child painting at an easel, surrounded by warm, protective lines that seemed to radiate love. In the corner, Michael had written, "Every child deserves a voice. Art gives them wings." "This is it," Sarah whispered, touching the sketch. "This is what the foundation needs to be. Not just classes or therapy, but a place where every child finds their voice." Victoria picked up one of Sarah's program proposals. "You've already designed the framework. Art therapy, education programs, family support services, like Mom and Dad were trying to build." Sarah nodded. "But bigger. Sustainable." Richard watched his granddaughter, no longer the scared, sick girl from the cemetery, but a young woman with vision and purpose. She'd inherited more than just Michael's eyes. She had his heart, his drive to make a difference. The press conference changed things, Marcus noted. Major donors are calling. They want to be part of this. "Let them," Sarah said firmly. "But on our terms. Every donation funds direct services. No vanity projects, no elite programs, just what these kids need." She stood, moving to the windows that overlooked the city. Somewhere out there, other children were sleeping in shelters, needing what her father had once given so freely: hope, creativity, a chance to be heard. "When can we start renovations on Hope Street?" she asked. "The contractors are ready," Richard replied. "Just waiting for your final approval on the plans." Sarah turned back to them, Claire's art supplies pin glinting on her collar. "Then let's begin, not just with the building, but with everything. The programs, the outreach, the healing." She picked up Michael's shelter badge, running her fingers over his smiling photo. "It's time to wake up their dreams." Victoria held out the small velvet box containing a set of house keys. "You're home," she said simply. "Whenever you're ready." Sarah stood in what had been Michael's room, now transformed. Her father's Harvard pennant still hung on one wall, but her own artwork now filled the spaces between his achievements. A new easel stood by the window, Victoria's gift, positioned to catch the morning light. "I've never had keys before," Sarah admitted, touching the metal tentatively. "Foster homes always kept them from us. Afraid we'd steal things, I guess." Victoria's heart clenched, but she kept her voice steady. "The blue key is for the front. A door, the silver one, opens the studio we're building in the East Wing." She paused. "And the small gold one, that was Michael's key to Hope Street. Anna found it in his old locker." Sarah's fingers closed around the keys, tears threatening. "I still keep expecting to wake up. Back on the streets, all of this just a dream." "Not a dream." Richard appeared in the doorway carrying a large wrapped package. "Though I hope this might feel like one coming true." Inside was an artist's portfolio case, professional grade, with Sarah's name embossed in gold. "For your foundation presentations," he explained. "Every artist needs the right tools." Sarah ran her hands over the leather, remembering how Claire had kept her art supplies in a cardboard box, carefully wrapped in plastic against the shelter's leaky roof. "Mom would have loved this. She'd love what you're doing with it more." Victoria opened Sarah's closet, where new clothes hung neatly, not the designer labels she'd initially ordered, but the kind of practical, artistic wear Sarah preferred. The contractor called. "Hope Street's renovation starts Monday." Sarah moved to her new desk, where architectural plans lay beside her sketchbook. The shelter's transformation was already underway in her mind. Bright murals, open spaces, rooms filled with light and possibility. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Martha entered with a silver tray. "Tea, Miss Sarah." "And Mrs. Stone. The garden club ladies are here. They're quite insistent about meeting your granddaughter." Sarah tensed. The social obligations of her new world still felt like ill-fitting clothes. "We can cancel," Victoria offered, but Sarah shook her head. "No, they're potential donors, right? For the foundation." At Victoria's nod, she squared her shoulders. Then they should see what their money would support. She gathered her sketchbook and newest foundation proposals. Victoria watched proudly as her granddaughter smoothed her simple dress, chosen for comfort rather than status, and pinned Claire's art supplies badge to her collar. "You don't have to win them over," Richard reminded her. "Just be yourself." "That's what Dad did, isn't it, at Hope Street?" Sarah smiled slightly, left the stone heir at the door, and just became Mr. Mike. The garden club ladies were exactly as expected. Pearls, perfectly coiffed hair, sharp eyes assessing every detail. But Sarah met their scrutiny with quiet confidence, spreading her shelter sketches across the tea table. "Art therapy isn't just about pretty pictures," she explained, showing them before and after drawings from her father's students. "It's about giving trauma a voice, helping children face their fears with creativity instead of anger." Mrs. Whitman, the board chairman's wife, peered at a particular sketch. "This is remarkable work. From homeless children?" "From children," Sarah corrected gently, "who happen to be homeless. My father taught me that labels don't define potential, neither does poverty." Victoria hid a smile behind her teacup. In moments like these, Sarah was pure Michael. The same quiet intensity, the same passion for changing minds. Later, after the ladies had left, with 4 major donation pledges secured, Sarah stood in her new doorway. The room still held echoes of Michael, but now it felt right. A bridge between past and future, just like her. "I had the strangest thought today," she confessed as Victoria helped her arrange art supplies on her new desk. "For the first time, I felt like both of them were with me. Dad's determination, Mom's gentle way with people. They are with you." Victoria touched the art supplies pin. "Every time you fight for those children, every time you create something new, they're right here." Sarah picked up her house keys, the metal warm in her palm. "Home," she whispered, testing the word. "I have a home." "You've always had one," Richard said from the doorway. "We just didn't know to look for you." He gestured to the family photos now lining her walls, Michael and Claire's love story displayed proudly alongside generations of stones. "Welcome home, granddaughter." Marcus's call came early on a Sunday morning. "Found something in Michael's old cloud storage. You need to see this." An hour later, the family gathered in Richard's study. Sarah sat between her grandparents as Marcus connected his laptop to the large screen. The video opened with Michael's face close to the camera, adjusting the frame. Testing. His voice, unheard for 2 years, filled the room. Victoria grabbed Richard's hand. Sarah stopped breathing. "Okay, here goes." Michael moved back, revealing he was in his Hope Street office. "I'm starting this video diary because, well, everything's about to change. Claire's pregnant. We're having a baby." His smile could have lit up the city. "A baby. I'm going to be a dad." Sarah touched the screen, tracing her father's familiar features. He looked exactly as she remembered from the photos. Kind eyes, gentle smile, paint smudges on his shirt collar. The video cut to another day. Michael held up ultrasound. "Photos. That's my daughter. Look at her. She's already perfect." He sobered slightly. "Dad, Mom, if you're watching this, I'm sorry you had to find out this way. I wanted to tell you in person. I've tried so many times, but..." He ran a hand through his hair. "I know what you'll say, that Claire's not from our world, that it's too soon, too risky, but you're wrong." The footage jumped again. Michael was at the shelter, surrounded by children's artwork. "This is what matters. These kids, their stories, their resilience. Claire taught me that wealth isn't about bank accounts. It's about what you give back. Our baby will grow up understanding that." Sarah wiped tears as the video continued. Michael at the jewelry store, picking out Claire's ring. Michael painting with shelter kids, his suit jacket discarded, happiness radiating from every movement. Michael and Claire planning the foundation that would never launch. Then came the last entry, dated the day of the accident. "I bought the ring." Michael held it up to the camera. "Not from the usual places. Dad would be horrified." He laughed softly. "But it's perfect. Claire will love it. And tomorrow," He took a deep breath. Tomorrow, I tell them everything. About Claire, the baby, our plans for Hope Street. He leaned closer to the camera, serious now. Mom, Dad, I know this isn't the life you planned for me. The merger, the expansion, all those careful plans. But I found something real, something that matters. Claire makes me better. This baby, his voice caught, this baby is a chance to create something meaningful. A legacy of love, not just wealth. The final clip showed Michael and Claire at Hope Street. She was painting with children while he filmed, her early pregnancy barely visible under her smock. Look at her, Michael whispered to the camera. She teaches them that broken things can be beautiful, that pain can become art, that everyone deserves a voice. He turned the camera to a young boy's painting. See this? Tommy couldn't speak when he came here. Now he tells stories through colors. That's real power, real change. The video ended with Michael's face, filling the frame one last time. I don't know how this story ends, but I know it's worth fighting for. Worth any price, because love, real love, that's the greatest legacy we can leave. The screen went dark. Sarah's quiet sobs broke the silence. Victoria pulled her close while Richard stood motionless, staring at his son's frozen image. He was wrong, Richard said finally, his voice rough. He did know how the story ends. He turned to Sarah. It ends with you, with the foundation, with everything he dreamed coming true. There's more, Marcus said quietly. He handed Richard a USB drive. Every Hope Street lesson filmed, every child's progress documented. He kept all of it, proof that art could heal. Sarah wiped her eyes, reaching for the drive. Then we'll show everyone. Use his videos in the foundation's work. Let Dad finish teaching. Victoria nodded, understanding. Through you, through every child you help. They watched the videos long into the night. Michael's voice filled the study, sharing stories of transformation, moments of breakthrough, dreams of what could be, and with each frame, Sarah saw more clearly the path ahead, the legacy she was meant to continue. The Hope Street Shelter's auditorium was packed for the Foundation's official launch. Every seat filled, people standing along the walls, shelter residents, business leaders, former students of Michael and Claire's art program. At the back, a wall of press cameras waited. Richard stood at the podium, his prepared speech untouched. Instead, he held up Michael's volunteer badge. 2 years ago, I thought I knew my son, he began, his voice carrying to every corner. I saw the Harvard graduate, the future CEO, the heir to everything I'd built. I was wrong. He touched the badge gently. This is who my son really was, a man who taught homeless children to paint, who saw value in things I'd forgotten to measure. Sarah sat in the front row between Victoria and Anna from Hope Street, wearing her mother's art supplies pin and her father's kind smile. I failed my son, Richard continued. Failed to see the beautiful truth of who he was becoming. Failed to recognize real wealth when it stood before me. He looked at Sarah. But life gives second chances if we're brave enough to take them. He gestured to the newly renovated shelter spaces around them. Bright walls covered in children's artwork, state-of-the-art therapy rooms, a garden courtyard visible through tall windows. The Claire Mitchell Stone Foundation isn't about charity. It's about vision, about seeing the masterpiece hiding in broken pieces. My son and Claire understood that. Now, through their daughter, their work continues. Sarah walked to join him at the podium, carrying the family photo album. She opened it to show the gathered crowd. Michael teaching art classes, Claire working with troubled kids, the love story that had created not just a child, but a mission. My father believed art could heal hearts, she said softly. My mother taught him that love was the greatest masterpiece. She turned to the next page, her own sketches for the Foundation's future. Together, they dreamed of this place. A sanctuary where creativity builds bridges, where pain becomes beauty, where every child finds their voice. Victoria joined them, bringing Claire's diary. This foundation honors not just two people, but a truth they lived, that real legacy isn't measured in dollars, but in lives transformed. The crowd stirred as Jenny, the girl Michael had taught to overcome her fear of painting, stepped forward with several other former students. Each carried artwork created in Michael and Claire's classes. "Mr. Mike taught me that mistakes can become miracles," Jenny said, her voice strong, "that every shadow needs light to make art. Today, I teach others what he gave me: courage to create, power to heal, freedom to dream." Richard watched as more former students shared their stories, each one a testament to Michael's real success, each one a piece of the legacy he'd been too blind to see. "The Stone family fortune was built on numbers," he said finally, "but my son discovered a different kind of wealth. Today, we pledge not just money, but commitment. Not just a building, but a promise. Every child who comes through these doors will find what Michael and Claire offered: acceptance, opportunity, hope." Sarah unveiled the foundation's logo, a paintbrush transforming into a key, surrounded by rising stars. "In memory of two people who believed love could rebuild worlds," she said. "And for every child still waiting to be heard." The applause was thunderous, but Richard barely heard it. He was watching his granddaughter, seeing Michael's compassion, Claire's grace, and a strength entirely her own. The press cameras flashed as he hugged her close. "Dad would be proud," Sarah whispered, "of all of us." Victoria touched the art supplies pin on Sarah's collar. "They both would be. Because you're not just continuing their work, you're expanding their dream." Through the windows, morning sunlight painted the garden in hope. On every wall, children's artwork told stories of transformation. And in every face, the legacy of Michael and Claire lived on, a masterpiece created from love, painted in colors of redemption. Sarah sat cross-legged on her bedroom floor, surrounded by college applications. The same schools Michael had researched years ago, his hopes for her future preserved in a folder she now knew by heart. Yale's art therapy program, Harvard's social work department, programs that bridged both worlds, the one she came from and the one she'd inherited. "You don't have to decide right away," Victoria said from the doorway. "Take your time." "Dad didn't." Sarah held up Michael's old acceptance letters, found in the storage unit. He applied early decision, never doubted his path. "No," Victoria smiled, sitting beside her. "He just chose a different one than we expected." She pulled out a newspaper from her bag. The headline read, "Hope Street Miracle, Stone Foundation Transforms Lives." The article detailed the foundation's first 3 months. 30 children in art therapy, 10 former shelter residents in college prep programs, 5 families moved into permanent housing. Small numbers, maybe, but each one a life changed. "Speaking of transformations," Victoria continued, "Anna sent these." She handed Sarah a stack of before and after photos. Children's artwork from their first day at Hope Street compared to now. Angry scribbles becoming coherent images. Dark themes lightening into hope. "Just like Dad's old progress notes," Sarah whispered, touching the images. "He kept track of every breakthrough. And now you do too." Victoria nodded towards Sarah's laptop, where spreadsheets tracked each child's journey. Modern technology, meeting Michael's compassionate vision. A knock interrupted them. Richard entered with James Chen, both looking pleased. "The board approved the expansion," James announced. 3 more shelters will have art therapy programs by spring." Sarah jumped up, scattering applications. "Really? All 3? Richard handed her the contracts. "Your presentation convinced them, showing Michael's video diary, the documented outcomes." He smiled. "You have your father's way with impossible dreams." Sarah hugged the contracts close. More space meant more children helped, more lives touched, more of her parents' vision realized. "There's something else." Victoria retrieved a large envelope from her bag. The family portrait photographer came by today. The photos showed the 3 of them in the garden. Sarah between her grandparents, Claire's art supplies pin catching. The light, but it was the second set that made Sarah's breath catch. The photographer had incorporated Michael and Claire's shelter photos into new family portraits, blending past and present, making the family whole. "For the foundation's main hall," Victoria explained, "and this one's just for you." The final photo showed Sarah in Michael's old office at Hope Street, now hers. Behind her, carefully restored and framed, hung the children's artwork he'd saved, their shared legacy, bridging 15 years. "I found this too," Richard said quietly, holding out a familiar blue sweater, the one Michael had bought for his unborn child. It was with Claire's things. Sarah touched the soft yarn, remembering the note pinned to it, for the baby. "Love, Dad." "I was thinking," she said slowly, "what if we started a clothing program for shelter families, new babies especially?" She looked up at her grandparents. "Call it Claire's Closet." Victoria's eyes filled with tears. "She'd love that." "And this," Sarah continued, reaching for her sketchbook. She showed them designs for a new mural, the shelter's entire east wall transformed into a gallery of success stories. "Every child who comes through our program gets to add their art, show others it's possible to rebuild." Richard studied the design. Just like Michael's video diary, proof that broken things can become beautiful. "That reminds me." James pulled out his tablet. The online art auction raised enough to fund scholarships for 5 more students, former shelter residents, all interested in art therapy or social work. Sarah added the numbers to her spreadsheet, each figure representing a dream her parents had planted, now blooming under her care. "You know," Victoria said softly, watching her work, "Michael kept records just like this. Every child, every breakthrough, every small victory." "I know," Sarah smiled, touching her father's volunteer badge on her desk. "He taught me that every masterpiece starts with a single stroke, even ones painted in hope." 1 year later, Sarah stood before Michael's grave in the early morning light. Fresh wildflowers brightened the granite, no longer just her solitary offering, but bouquets from dozens of lives her father had touched. Children's artwork laminated. Against the weather, notes of gratitude, small painted stones carrying messages of hope. She opened the memory box she'd brought, crafted by Hope Street's first woodworking class. Inside lay the pieces of a story: Michael's volunteer badge, Claire's art supplies pin, the blue baby sweater. The engagement ring finally returned to its rightful place on the stone. "You'd be proud, Dad," she said softly. "The foundation's helping more kids than you and Mom ever dreamed possible." Richard and Victoria joined her, carrying their own memories to share. Victoria placed Claire's diary beside the flowers. Richard added Michael's Harvard diploma, no longer hidden in a drawer, but honored alongside his shelter achievements. "Look who else came," Victoria smiled. Down the path, a group approached. Jenny, now the foundation's lead art teacher. Tommy, studying psychology and art therapy. Maria, whose paintings had just been featured in a gallery show. Former shelter. Kids whose lives Michael and Claire had transformed, now helping others find their voice. "We brought something," Jenny said, unveiling a large canvas. It was a collage of photographs, artwork, and testimonials from every child the foundation had helped this year. In the center, Michael and Claire's shelter photo watched over their growing legacy. "Your parents' love story didn't end," Jenny told Sarah. "It just got bigger." Sarah touched the canvas, tracing faces she knew. Children who'd arrived at Hope, Street broken, and left it renewed. Each one carrying a piece of Michael and Claire's dream forward. "The foundation's expanding to 3 more cities," Richard announced quietly. "Sarah's design for the program is becoming a national model." Victoria squeezed Sarah's hand. "And someone got her acceptance letter yesterday." Sarah smiled, touching her Yale acceptance letter in the memory box. She'd chosen their art therapy program, a perfect blend of her father's alma mater and her mother's passion for healing. "I used to come here feeling lost," she said, arranging the memorial items just so. "Now I come to share good news, to remember that even the darkest moments can lead to light." The morning sun broke through the clouds, catching the engagement. Rings, modest diamond. Sarah remembered that first morning, standing here terrified and alone, holding a secret that felt too big to share. "You were right, Dad," she whispered. "Real legacy isn't about money. It's about love, about seeing the masterpiece in broken pieces." She looked at her grandparents, at the gathering of lives her parents had touched. About family. The kind we're born to, and the kind we create. Together they stood in the growing light, surrounded by proof that love's echoes never truly fade. They just transform, becoming new stories, new hope, new chances to heal. The morning wind, scattered flower. Petals across Michael's grave, nature's own artwork painted in shades of redemption and grace.